I see this constantly. People add organic matter, pat themselves on the back, and then wonder why plants yellow, roots stall, or beds go anaerobic. The issue isn't that organic inputs are bad, it's that different organic materials break down at radically different rates. And if you don't match that rate to how and where you're growing, you end up feeding microbes instead of crops. If you care about results, this matters more than almost any fertilizer tweak. Wood chips, bark, and sawdust aren't just high carbon. They're high in lignin, which bacteria largely ignore. Fungi do the real work here, and fungi operate slower and deeper. In garden paths and surface mulches, this is a gift. Chips can last a year or more, building fungal networks and improving moisture retention underneath. Mixed directly into soil, especially fine sawdust, they can lock nitrogen for an entire season. I've tested this in identical raised beds using tomato transplants. Beds amended with 10% composted wood chips perform normally. Beds with raw sawdust at just 5% volume showed persistent pale growth, unless supplemented with an additional 30 to 40 grams of actual nitrogen per square meter. That's not theory. That's measured correction. Particle size decides whether material rots or ferments. Smaller particles break down faster because microbes can access more surface area. That sounds good until oxygen becomes the limiting factor. Blended food waste, fine coffee grounds, or pulverized green matter can go anaerobic fast, especially in heavy soil or deep beds. When oxygen drops, you don't get composting. You get fermentation, organic acids, and root stress. In small backyard beds, this is why thick layers of fine mulch can smell sour and stunt seedlings. In hydroponic biofilters, it's why overly fine organic inputs crash systems. I keep organic particles in recirculating systems, large enough that water can move freely, or I pre-digest them in aerobic compost teas before introduction. Moisture and temperature quietly double or halve breakdown speed. This sounds obvious, but gardeners ignore it when timing amendments. If you add fast-breaking material in midsummer, you're releasing nutrients immediately. Add the same material in early spring, and it may sit half-processed while plants starve. In raised beds, I've learned to front-load slow materials in fall and reserve fast materials for active growth periods. A practical example is leaf mold. Whole leaves added in fall barely change over winter. By spring, they're still intact, providing structure and moisture control without nutrient theft. Chop those same leaves finely and add them in June, and you'll see nitrogen dip within weeks unless you compensate. Soil texture decides how forgiving your mistakes are. Sandy soils leak nutrients fast but stay aerobic. Clay soils hold nutrients but suffocate easily. Raised beds usually sit somewhere in between but often lean toward excess moisture. In heavy soil, fast-breaking material needs to stay on the surface. In sandy beds, you can get away with incorporating more because oxygen isn't as limiting. I adjust based on texture, not dogma. In hydroponic systems using organic inputs, there's almost no forgiveness. Breakdown speed must match system capacity exactly. Anything too fast overwhelms oxygen. Anything too slow becomes inert waste. That's why I pre-compost or mineralize organic feeds before they ever touch the system. Not all compost is finished, and that matters. Compost that's dark isn't necessarily stable. Stability is about whether microbes still want to eat it. If they do, they'll keep pulling nitrogen and oxygen. I judge compost by smell temperature and how it behaves when re-wetted. Stable compost stays cool, smells neutral, and doesn't heat when moistened. Immature compost can spike 10 degrees Celsius overnight. In beds that spike, steals nutrients from crops at exactly the wrong time. For food production, I want compost that releases nutrients slowly, not one that's still digesting itself. Matching breakdown speed to crop demand is the real skill. Leafy greens want fast, shallow nutrient release. Fruit crops want slower, deeper support. Perennials care more about structure than short-term fertility. In a lettuce bed, I'll surface apply thin layers of green material every 2 weeks, letting it break down quickly without disrupting roots. In a tomato bed, I build structure with woody material on top and rely on composted inputs below. In hydroponics, I only use organic matter that's already converted into soluble or microbially stable forms. Raw inputs have no place there unless you enjoy system failures. The mistake isn't using organic material, it's using the wrong one at the wrong time. Once you understand why materials break down faster or slower, gardening stops feeling random. You stop chasing deficiencies and start designing systems that feed crops predictably. That's the difference between growing plants and managing biology. If this helped sharpen how you think about organic inputs, subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who's still wondering why their rich soil keeps letting them down. Better food comes from understanding the process, not piling on more material and hoping it works.